welcome everybody. Thanks everybody for coming today. And this is my first and last press conference of my term, so thanks for being here. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, thank you everybody for coming here today. Obviously we felt as though now I think 7 weeks into my term, it was important that we have briefings on all our key investigations being conducted by the Department of Attorney General in tandem with the Michigan State Police. And I'm very glad that Colonel Joe Gasper could join us here this morning. Thank you for being here. Before we start with the individual investigation updates, let me say that it is actually pretty unusual for the Department of Attorney General to do a mid-investigation update this way. But both Colonel Gasper and I were new to these positions, obviously, and we know how important this work is to the people of the state of Michigan. So with that being said, because these are active investigations, we might not be able to answer all of your questions today, but we'll do our best. In all three of the investigations that we're going to be talking about here today, the Flint water crisis, the Michigan State University Nassel investigation, and the clergy abuse in the Catholic Church investigation. As you know, they all began under my predecessor, but they have not stopped, and they continue. We have a great team of attorneys and law enforcement officers here, and we appreciate in particular the support from Colonel Gasper and from the Michigan State Police. They've given us resources that have been invaluable and that are absolutely necessary to conduct these important investigations. We absolutely could not conduct these investigations without their good work. So, to start with, let's talk a little bit about the Flint investigations. First of all, I think it's important for me to make clear that we have two types of cases that we're handling in this office. So we have 79 civil cases, but at the same time there are also the criminal cases, 8 of which right now are active criminal cases that are pending. I feel strongly, of course, that the people of Flint deserve nothing short of justice, and I know the governor would agree with that assessment. So we're currently in discussions on the civil cases, and we're hopeful we will be able to resolve them and provide justice to the people of Flint. But there was sort of an unusual situation when I came into the office. And for anybody who followed the campaign, you probably know that I was highly critical of the way the criminal investigations were being handled. And when I came in, and I mean before I took office during the transition period, what I learned was that almost no one in the entire office was actually on the criminal side of the investigation. Practically the entire office had been conflicted out because of the civil cases. So the only people at all from this office that were on the criminal side of that wall, the conflict wall, were Attorney General Bill Schuette and his senior advisor, Rusty Hills. And then there was one new investigator who had been brought in and was put on the criminal side, someone named Jeff Sapenko that you'll hear more about. So, you know, as you know, they'd hired a private firm and Todd Flood in order to handle the criminal investigations. And so, other than people I've named, there was no one else in the department. So coming in, literally, it was just the one investigator that was left. And, you know, you had a private firm handling these cases and practically no oversight by this office whatsoever. So what I did when I took office is right after I appointed our new Solicitor General, Hammoud, she went on the criminal side of the wall, and she's a career prosecutor. She came to us from the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office where she was a lead attorney. So I made her our lead on the criminal cases and allowed her to build a team of career prosecutors and investigators that would be in-house, that would work for the Department of Michigan Attorney General. And these would have to be new people that came in who were not on, you know, already on the civil side of the conflict wall. Because I felt that it was really important for us to have people working on these cases that were actually accountable to this office and accountable directly to the people of the state. Because this, after all, is the people's law firm, right? That's what the Office of Michigan Attorney General is. And so in a minute, Fadwa will have an update on these cases. for you, and then she's going to have more information, I know, in the coming weeks, more specifically. But now that she's on board, and I know that we have someone who is very experienced, who can be on that side of the wall, what I've decided to officially do is to join the civil side, where, of course, as I said, we have 79 ongoing cases, including 3 cases in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan, one in which there were a consolidated 68 cases of personal injury and property claims, claims of violating the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, and claims for violating the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So from now on, what's going to happen is when there are updates on the criminal cases, that will be FAGWA handling those cases. I will not be a party to that. I will learn what's happening on those cases, frankly, at the same time that all of you do. And I will only be privy to the things that are public information. So if you have any questions about that, you'll be able to talk to FAGWA and her team. And then, of course, as I said, I'll be on the civil side, and I'll be active in the negotiations that are taking place on those cases. But for right now, I'd like to have Hammoud come up and give everybody a brief update on what's happening in the criminal cases.
Good morning, everyone. As Solicitor General, I am proud to be here alongside Attorney General Dana Nessel and a stellar team of dedicated public servants representing the people of Michigan. And as lead attorney of the Flint water crisis, I'm especially proud to be representing the people of Flint. Prior to taking the lead on the civil cases related to the crisis, as you just heard, Attorney General Nessel made sure that our office is well equipped and laser focused on handling the criminal cases. And I am grateful to her for her thoughtful vision and for her leadership. And I believe she has positioned our teams well to ensure that justice is served. I have 2 items that I would like to discuss today. First, I am pleased to announce that Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy will be working with me jointly as we build out a team that will include experienced prosecutors, career prosecutors, and certified law enforcement officers to investigate and prosecute the Flint water crisis cases. Attorney General Nessel had asked Prosecutor Worthy to join the team out of respect for her expertise and her reputation. I share that respect. I trust Prosecutor Worthy, and I am honored to work alongside someone who I just know to be of the highest integrity in the pursuit of justice for the people of the state. Second, as you also just heard, under the previous administration, Attorney General Bill Schuette had directed an outside firm to lead the prosecutions. Attorney General Nessel and I are bringing the power back to the people by making sure that the leadership of the Flint water crisis cases comes directly from this office. With that said, I am sincerely grateful to all of the people who have worked on this case thus far. But this case is about the people of Flint, and this case should be led by the People's Law Firm. Public leadership on the investigative side also includes my appointment of Special Agent Jeff Sapinko as the office's in-house chief investigator on the criminal cases. A veteran of these cases who has served as the only certified law enforcement official assigned to them thus far. I trust that with his leadership, and that his leadership will be critical for strengthening the investigative team on this case. Public leadership will also mean that moving forward, Attorney Todd Flood will now serve the office of the Attorney General in the capacity of Assistant Attorney General on the Flint water crisis cases. Mr. Flood brings 3 years of valuable institutional knowledge, commitment, and relationships from his tenure as the special prosecutor on these cases. I appreciate his work and his team's work on these cases thus far, and I look forward to the contributions that he will make to the team of experienced and career prosecutors that our office is assembling with the help of Prosecutor Kim Worthy. Prosecutor Worthy and I will hold a press conference in the upcoming future to keep you updated on our progress and introduce the team. I'd like to close by reiterating that I am under no illusion about the amount of work that we have ahead of us. I will also be doing additional outreach to engage survivors of this crisis and will, as well as community stakeholders. I come into this role with concern for the victims of the public health crisis in the city of Flint. And my only preconceived notion deals with whether or not the people of Flint were wronged here. They were. The people of Flint were wronged. I do not have preconceived notions about who must be charged, and I am faithfully allowing the evidence to guide our team's work. The Attorney General and I believe that justice needs to be served, and that everyone, regardless of their title, is equal under the law, and no one is above the law. Thank you.
Thanks, Badwa. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears and talk about our work on the MSU investigation. First, the report that former Special Independent Counsel William Forsythe issued at the end of last year was very comprehensive, but as noted, would require some additional work before it could be completed. And as he noted, our department was asked by the MSU Board of Trustees to conduct an in-depth investigation into MSU's handling of the Nassel scandal more than a year ago. Now, as a result, 3 individuals were charged with crimes and have pending court dates. And those are our former MSU President Luana K. Simon, former MSU College of Osteopathic Medicine Dean William Strample, and former MSU gymnastics coach Kathy Klages. In addition, as many of you know, yesterday we served administrative complaints in tandem with our partners at the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs to 2 MSU athletic trainers, Destiny Teachner-Hawk and Liana Haddon, who are alleged to have given false statements to investigators about their knowledge of sexual abuse of students by Nassel. Full and complete cooperation of MSU, frankly, continues to be a challenge. And the irony, of course, is that the trustees themselves are the ones who asked for the investigation, and yet they have made the work of our department extraordinarily difficult. Now, as you know, we are seeking an interview with then interim president John Engler before he resigned. And following his resignation, I wrote a letter to then MSU attorney Bob Young requesting the following. I requested an interview with John Engler, whose contract with MSU requires him to, and I'll quote, respond and provide information, end quote, regarding matters within his knowledge even after his employment with the university was concluded. Now, that interview is not yet scheduled, although we have spoken to John Engler's attorney numerous times in an effort to set it up. We can also confirm that we have requested and received documents related to former trustee George Perlis and the alleged forgiveness of a debt owed by him to the university in exchange for his agreement to resign from the board. You need to get that. In exchange for his agreement to resign from the board prior to January, so that then Governor Snyder could appoint a replacement. So we are looking into that, and we are also continuing to review the remaining documents that we have from MSU related to this investigation. And as you know, some of our remaining document review was related to documents that MSU claimed were privileged and were being reviewed by the court because of that claim. And so the math here is a little important, so let me briefly review the status of those MSU documents that we requested. Now, MSU disclosed that they had withheld or redacted about 7,500 documents, and then we went to court to seek those documents. And that matter was assigned to East Lansing District Court Judge Richard Ball, who said he would review the privileged documents. MSU then voluntarily produced about 1,000 of those documents. Of the almost 6,500 documents remaining, the judge determined that 177 of them were not privileged and should go to the Attorney General. MSU then objected and complained that 29 of those 177 documents should still be either redacted or withheld. Judge Ball then took a look at those 29 documents again, and now with his review complete, it doesn't look like this office will be receiving any more additional documents. So the bottom line is this: more than 7,500 documents that MSU initially withheld or redacted heavily, we are never going to see at least 6,000, if not more, of those. And they have fought us on this, and they fought this office pretty much every step of the way on that. So I can say at this point, this office has done everything we can to try to force the university to be as transparent as possible, but there's really only so much we can do without the university's cooperation. And now I would say it's time for Michigan State University to do the right thing. Our goal here is to help provide justice and also to provide a sense of security, and that something like this will never and can never happen again. And I would really sincerely hope that the Board of Trustees would agree that that is the most important thing. And it was my hope that the new board members and the new interim president would live up to their pledge of cooperation. And I'm still hopeful that that will happen. If MSU really wants to get to the root of the problem, it must right the ship. And it would make sense for the MSU Board of Trustees to waive that privilege and to produce the information that we have consistently sought out, not just the documents that they want us to be able to see. And I would like to remind the board of their fiduciary obligation to the people of this state. That means that the Board of Trustees has an obligation to act in the best interests of the people of this state, not MSU's donors and not its brand image. At the very least, the individual members of the Board of Trustees really should take a look at those 6,000 plus pages of documents to see if they think there's something that the public deserves to know. And finally, I want to thank the hard work of Colonel Gasper's team and also the Eaton County Sheriff. Now, we've sat down, we've had lengthy discussions with Eaton County Prosecutor Doug Lloyd, and we've mutually decided that our office will now take on the investigation of gymnastics coach John Geddard. Now, Geddard founded Twisters, the gymnastics training center where Larry Nassar assaulted many of his victims. And Prosecutor Lloyd recognized that the relationships that this office has with the Nassar survivors, and the Eaton County prosecutor thought it only makes sense that the investigation come to the AG's office. So we will be handling that, and this particular investigation will be led by our newly appointed career prosecutor, Danielle Hageman-Clark. Don't mind standing up for a second, Danielle. She's here with us today. She brings with her 20 years of experience prosecuting criminal sexual conduct cases and also homicide cases. As one of our state's leading prosecutor on sexual assault crimes, and if I can say, we worked together for many years at the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. She was in the Homicide Division. She was head of the Sexual Assault Unit there. Danielle has prosecuted many high-profile serial rapist cases. She most recently worked at the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan, training people on these cases, training people around the state. And I know she also worked on the rape kits in Wayne County. So she brings with her a vast amount of experience. I think she's going to be a valuable resource to our team, and she's going to be playing a key role in both the MSU investigation and also the Catholic Church clergy abuse investigation, as well as I said, the Geddard investigation. So we welcome her, and thank you for finally ceding to my many weeks of begging you to come to this office. Your work is going to be greatly appreciated. So that is going to conclude our remarks on MSU, and now I'm going to move on to our third investigation involving Catholic Church clergy abuse. So, to the best of my knowledge, this office I don't think has talked very much about our ongoing investigation in the Michigan 7 Catholic dioceses, so let me bring you up to speed on this. In October, simultaneous raids were executed at all 7 dioceses: Detroit, Saginaw, Lansing, Marquette, Gaylord, Kalamazoo, and Grand Rapids. And that involved nearly 70 officers and special agents, mostly state police, and 14 assistant attorneys general who assisted the officers during the execution of those search warrants. Michigan is the first state to execute a statewide search warrant and was on site to collect materials deemed relevant to the investigation. We did not depend on the diocese to turn over documents, which is what primarily happened in other states. So as a result of that search, our team seized and is now continuing to review hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, including procedures for receiving and investigating allegations of abuse by the church. Our investigative team has met or spoken with the lawyers representing each of the Michigan 7 dioceses. We sent a letter to every parish in the state asking them to inform their parishioners of this investigation. Now, as of this date, we've received more than 300 tips through our clergy abuse hotline, an online tip form, and there are tips being investigated right now for potential criminal prosecution. So what we're doing is we're strongly urging victims, or anyone who knows of a victim, to contact the state's team of certified law enforcement investigators by calling this number. It's up there, 1-844-324-3374, or filling out our online tip form at michigan.gov/clergy abuse. Now, we've asked the diocese to hold off on their own internal review process until our investigation can be concluded. And it's important for the public to know that this investigation is statewide. Priests have been moved from one diocese to the next, protecting the priests and the parish. And we're also going to be cooperating with other states, I believe it's 12 other states, that now have similar ongoing investigations, because we know that there have been priests that have been moved from state to state to state. So this will be a cooperative effort. And what I would like to say to the public is this: if an investigator comes to your door and asks to speak with you, please ask to see their badge and not their rosary, okay? And here's why that matters. Because many churches and dioceses appear to be self-policing and encouraging parishioners to report abuse to them so they can conduct their own internal investigations. And so we've heard many stories from victims who've been encouraged to take settlements and sign NDAs or non-disclosure agreements. And victims may believe that they cannot or should not report abuse to us because the church is going to handle it. And simply put, that's just not true. Firstly, if you signed an NDA, you still have a right, and I would say a responsibility, to speak to law enforcement authorities. An NDA will not protect the church. As we've seen, again, priests were moved from parish to parish and diocese to diocese, and that's why our statewide investigation is so critically important. We can and we will follow the trail of abuse where it's occurred. And victims, many of whom were abused years ago and have silently lived with the pain, anguish, and emotional scars well into adulthood, deserve to be heard, and their abusers deserve to be brought to justice. The clergy abuse investigation is jarringly similar to the MSU investigation in that both institutions, when confronted with a public sex abuse scandal, publicly pledged their cooperation with law enforcement authorities, but have failed to deliver on those public promises. And regrettably, it would seem as though these two powerful institutions care more about protecting their brand than the people they serve. But if the Catholic Church really wants to stand up to its pledge to assist in our investigation, I would like to say this. Here's how they can actually help. Firstly, stop self-policing. our office is conducting a thorough investigation, and it's important we be able to talk with any and all victims harmed by these egregious acts without the intervention of the church. Secondly, look, we may not be able to charge every priest, but our office will be sending letters to the diocese when we find credible allegations. And we ask that the diocese step up and, deal with these abusers and protect people from them when the statute of limitations keeps us from being able to do that ourselves, which is often the case. Or frankly, when there are other unethical acts that are uncovered, and then we make the parishes aware of. And I know that just recently we had a number of cases where we saw acts that could not be charged criminally. Maybe they didn't rise to the level of criminal liability, but they were certainly incredibly unethical acts of priests who were in sexual relationships with the parishioners. And thirdly, work with our office to set up a fund for the victims that we can then administer so victims can get the help that they rightfully deserve for the trauma that they experienced under their watch. I should say the watch of the church. So, unfortunately, the reality is there are predators in the priesthood that are still out there, and we feel as though they have to be stopped. And we need to ensure that this doesn't happen again, and that bad actors are consistently held accountable, and also, frankly, it can lead to other changes in the law, such as mandatory reporting statutes that may be important through this investigation. So we're committed to releasing a final report at the end of this investigation so that everyone knows and understands what we've uncovered during the course of this lengthy investigation. So, and I will say that none of this investigation could have happened without the outstanding support and expertise of Michigan State Police, and we are very grateful to them. And of course, again, it's an honor to welcome Colonel Joe Gasper to speak about his role here. So why don't you come on up, Colonel, and say a few words.
Thank you, Attorney General Nessel. We appreciate your kind words and the quality of our investigators and our investigations. We have some of the best detectives that MSP can offer assigned to both of these cases, and we're partner with your office and be the finders of fact. I'd like to point out that although we have numerous investigators assigned, two of our lead investigators deserve a special note of attention, as they have led countless interviews and gone through countless pages of documents. One is First Lieutenant Lisa G. Cram, and the other is First Lieutenant Ryan Pennell. Attorney General, as you noted, both of these cases are exceptionally complex and complicated. While we are committed to seeking justice for all the victims in the cases, we are also equally committed to ensuring that we conduct a thorough and proper investigation. We have high standards within the MSP, and I can assure you that we won't be cutting any corners and let you or the citizens of Michigan down. I also want to echo your comments regarding the importance of reporting tips directly to law enforcement. We take all leads seriously, and it's critically important that we hear directly from you when you have information to provide. Again, I thank you for your support and partnership for making these investigations a priority for not only the state police and the Attorney General, but also for the citizens of Michigan, in particular the victims. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Colonel. Again, appreciate everything that you and your team are doing, both on the MSU investigation and also on the Catholic Church clergy abuse investigation. So finally, I'd like to give a shout out to one of your colleagues in the media, who I think has done a tremendous service to this state. So I'd like to personally, on behalf of this office, thank Ken Kolker of Wood TV, who I see back there. Honestly, I think he did a fantastic job of shining light on the clergy abuse happening in the Grand Rapids area. I think it was an incredibly important series that you did. And I will tell you, you received at least a couple dozen tips as a result of that. So, some of which we're investigating immediately. So I would say this, I know obviously that Ken put a tremendous amount of work into that, but, what I'd ask all of you in the media is cover this story, cover this story, talk about what's happened, and tell people, please, about our tip line and our website, because that's really the most important way that we're going to make certain that we can fully investigate every incident of abuse, is by having people know that there's somebody here who cares, and that, I have a whole, team of people here that are working on these issues. So anyway, thanks again, Ken. So my challenge is to all of you, though, to stay on top of this and to allow us to continue the investigation and to sort of be an active participant and to assist us with that. So anyway, before I wrap things up here and get to your many questions, I really want to take a minute to recognize our incredible team of career prosecutors and investigators who worked tirelessly on all of these cases to seek justice for the people that we serve. On what, all three of these, such critically important cases involving so many people in our state. So if you don't mind, I'd like to acknowledge them one by one. Our Chief of Staff, Laura Moody. Around wave. There you go, good, excellent. Assistant Attorney General, Christina Grassi.
Turn around. Oh,
that's you, turn around, wave. Assistant Attorney General, Michelle Bry. Our Chief Investigator, David Dwyer. Where are you, Dave? Oh, there he is. Assistant Attorney General, Brian Kolosic. And of course, again, we welcome our new Assistant Attorney General, Danielle Hageman-Clark. Welcome. And with that, I guess this is the fun part, huh? We'll take, I think Colonel Gasper has to leave in a few minutes. So if you have any questions for the Colonel, I think we should start with him because he's got to go. Does anybody have any questions for Colonel Gasper?